Beep, 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 beep. Hello, welcome to the Court of the EDI Jester. I've got an article which is somewhat interesting, coming off the back of my tirade this morning, which I was obviously extremely angry about Annalise Doddery Dodd and the nonsense merchants over at the Labour Party. Here's an interesting one for you. Something a bit different from what I normally discuss, but I think relevant, as we seem to have an entire swath of us that doesn't recognise how dangerous all of it is rather than just one bit of it. So I thought this might be a bit of a sobering read. And something of interest for us to take account of, because obviously we want to make sure that we're, keeping up with what's going on, folks, in it, eh? From the Daily Mail. Oh, become a warrior teacher, will you? And share this from YouTube. Subscribe, please. I need subscribers. Share this from YouTube. Become a warrior teacher. Buy me a super thanks. Buy me, The headline, screaming at us today from an article by Sanchez Manning on the 24th. Is racial segregation creeping into British schools? That's the disturbing claim from increasing numbers of teachers and parents who say the importing from America of critical race theory is teaching 7-year-olds they're racist. So they're racist and trans now, are they? God, it's almost like we're seeing everything through a queer and trans lens. You remember Black Lives Matter with their queer and trans lens? It's almost like we're seeing everything through a queer and trans lens, because Black Lives Matter took in the left, didn't it? The Liberals. It was lovely, wasn't it? BLM. Turns out they weren't what we thought they were. Now they're all being investigated, I believe, in America. Let's see what the Mail's got to say. Bear in mind it's the Daily Fail. Right. Nick Miller paints a disturbing picture of the state of race relations in British schools. The anti-racism movement started off very small and no one heard about it for a couple of years, he told the Mail this week. But now they've upped the ante. If they start offering classes to black children only, then soon we could be looking at black-only days out, black-only lunch, sittings or white children standing up in class to admit their guilt. All of this stuff is already happening in the US, Australia and Canada. And that's what we're heading for. Now, to those of you that are not familiar with the idea of anti-racism, it isn't what you think it is. Surprise, surprise, these buggers play games with words, right? Anti-racism says the following. You are either anti-racist or you are racist. One of its proponents is a guy called Ibrahim X. Kendi, who's completely bonkers. Go and watch Coleman Hughes instead. He's brilliant and beautiful. Oh, Coleman, I love you. So, Ibrahim X. Kendi, right? He wants a totalitarian race board at the heart of American politics that will decide what can and cannot go to the people and what will and will not be given out based on race. He's a totalitarian maniac. That's anti-racism. Anti-racism is not what you think it is. When you say you're anti-racist, you better understand what you believe. Right? Because they've hijacked it. It's being used. Anti-racism is not what you think it is. People go, oh, I'm anti-racist. And I go, are you sure? Right. So what does that mean to you, anti-racism? Well, obviously it means that I try to treat people equally. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with that. Don't get fooled. Same nonsense as they do with gender and queer theory and everything else. The three teats of the postmodern udder. It's dangerous, okay? Racial segregation in British schools might sound unthinkable, yet as Mr. Miller knows, it has already begun. Earlier this month, a father of two received a WhatsApp message from the primary school in leafy Muswell Hill, North London, that his child attends. Sent by the Inclusion and Anti-Racism group, these people, at Cold Fall Primary School to all Year 4 parents, it invited black and black heritage children to join 2-hour online sessions every Saturday morning. The message explained, the aim is to accelerate progress in reading and writing whilst also developing the children's knowledge of black history and culture. The 33-lesson course, which cost the school £400 per child, was provided by an outside organisation. Here we go again. Here we go again, right? White children were excluded, whatever their interest in black history and culture. In 1963, Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. For 60 years, yet 60 years on, it seems that the colour of a child's skin matters more than ever. How has the anti-racism movement reached such a stage in Britain that schools, in a sinister development, are dividing children according to their ethnic background and giving one group seemingly preferential treatment? The answer lies in the expanding influence of a controversial doctrine taking hold in public life, so-called critical race theory. First developed in the 1970s by a civil rights lawyer turned Harvard law professor Derek Bell, critical race theory is founded on the idea that racism is systemic in national institutions and that these institutions serve to ensure white people remain dominant in society. Power and oppression, victim oppressor. See it? Same stuff, right? Despite originating in America, critical race theory has found increasing influence in Britain thanks to political activist groups. It gained new traction following the 2020 murder of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, by a white police officer in Minneapolis. Since that event and the subsequent protest riots and use and rise of Black Lives Matter, remember Black Lives Matter see everything through a queer and trans lens. So they use critical race theory, queer and trans. So gender ideology, queer theory and race. That's BLM. They see everything through a queer and trans lens with a Marxist framework. If you don't believe me, I've got the receipts. Since that event and the subsequent protest riots and rise of Black Lives Matter, an increasing number of schools, as well as companies, public bodies, universities and other organisations, are now adopting anti-racist policies, many influenced by critical race theory. These include terms, because you always got terms, haven't you? You always got the memes. What are the terms? White privilege, the claim white people benefit in society simply from being white. And that being colourblind, the belief that all people should be treated equally regardless of race, is not an option. You can't do it. You've got to bend down at the knee of whoever it is that's higher in the hierarchy than you are. Such concepts have proven highly controversial in both the US and the UK, and critics arguing that they are divisive and deeply politicized theories that should not be presented as fact, particularly to children. Starting to sound similar? Starting to sound familiar? Leftist political ideology. Sound familiar? Many question how relevant critical race theory is to the British experience. It's not. It's irrelevant to the British experience, given that it was developed in response to racial inequalities in the US society. Nevertheless, it has been taken up enthusiastically by many educational bodies. Just this week, the campaign group Don't Divide Us Now, an extraordinary group, published a paper. Go and have a look. They've got a website. Published a paper examining the teaching materials provided by third-party organisations who operate in schools. The same infiltration, get the kids. The same infiltration, right, that we've seen in gender. The same infiltration, the same tactics, because it's the same people. Analysis of these third-party organisations found 48 out of 49 promoted critical race theory as fact. Divide, conquer, they're going to make your children mentally ill. Schools will make your children mentally ill. Here's a hell of a statement I never thought I'd make. 48 out of 49 promoted critical race theory as fact. In turn, these bodies were listed as working with some 135 schools across the country. But the tenets of critical race theory are gaining wider influence across the social schools network. Don't Divide Us was set up in response to critical race theory's tightening grip on our education system. The group's founders include Baroness Claire Fox, head of the think tank Academy of Ideas, and English teacher and academic Dr. Alka Siegel-Cuthbert. Fox and Siegel-Cuthbert are former members of the left-wing organisation Workers Against Racism, but they are nevertheless deeply concerned the radical agenda being pursued under the guise of anti-racism is now undermining British race relations. You think? I've met both these women. They're amazing, right? They're amazing. They're good, intellectual, left-wing thinkers. They're bothered. What are you going to do? Clap because Annalise Dodd said something nice about trans people? Get real. You can't even see the horizon if you think that's okay. What I did this morning, I'm still angry. Don't Divide Us has said, we reject the proposition that the UK is inherently racist, with racial prejudice embedded into our educational, cultural and legal institution. Where racism exists, it should be unapologetically challenged. We oppose those ideologues who seek to irrevocably damage our society by hijacking this important cause. Gosh, they're force teaming again. They're cuckooing again in the nest of other movements that have made great progress over the years. It's the same folk. This week, Dr. Siegel-Cuthbert spoke to the Mail about the findings of the group report. She said the influence of organisations that promote critical race theory in schools now extends way beyond the individual schools they are working with, to the point that they are now reshaping education from the top down. Wakey, wakey. If you've got everyone from the Department for Education to exam boards, teaching unions and local authorities all endorsing this critical race theory-inspired narrative, then the teaching profession is being reshaped. Primary legislation. While it might be useful to analyse critical race theory, Dr. Siegel Cuthbert explains it is problematic that such complex ideas are being presented to school children as fact. There's no discussion around these concepts. It's basically just, you will believe this or you're a racist. Trans women are women. Get it? See it? These groups, for instance, are asserting that colourblind approaches have failed. Although I can't see where the evidence is for that. Colourblind approaches have got us from slavery and colonialism to today. So a set of highly partisan political beliefs are being introduced from primary ages, if not nursery ages, in schools that are meant to be helping children develop their faculties to become independent thinkers. There's the words, independent thinkers. Baroness Fox, who trained as a teacher, further argues that by presenting political concepts such as white privilege as fact, schools are breaching the 1996 Education Act, which dictates that they have to have a duty to be impartial. All of this is political movements, queer theory, gender ideology, critical race theory, all the same thing. The far left nonsense that we must call out. Baroness Fox tells the Mail, you should have a school policy that says the school does not tolerate racism and have an appropriate complaint system, she tells the Mail. But what you don't do is have endless lessons on racism and completely overhaul the curriculum via an ideological group. Sounds similar. It's just, you can't, how can you not see it? Don't Divide Us has warned about troubling materials provided to schools by third-party organisations. One such resource, as the Mail reported this week, is a graphic pyramid of a white supremacy pyramid. It claims bias, stereotypes and prejudice can lead to racist words and actions, leading to physical harm and death, and explain how indifference can then lead to mass murder. Why don't you go and talk to the people in the Sudan, where mass murder is actually happening, you bunch of race-grifting swine, and take your gender-addled grievance gerbil friends with you. Okay, I think that's enough from me, because the article's really good, and you should read it. I have a lot of faith in Claire Fox, and I have a lot of faith in Alka. I also have a lot of faith in the organisation Don't Divide Us Now, which I suggest you go and look. You can look it up, right? Go and have a look. This is the second today, the second of the videos that I've done today. And it deals with one simple hard fact, both of them. You cannot vote for the left until they, absolutely, with stentorian voices, condemn the practice of critical race theory, queer theory, and gender identity ideology. The teaching of it in schools, the using of it in companies, the using of it in universities as anything but an abhorrent political idea that's had its day. You cannot stand by and vote for any party that will not do that. Because if you do, you are voting for the undoing of a civilization that got us to the point that I can sit here, warble through a piece of technology, and annoy you without being in the same room. Think very carefully, women on the left, about what you are about to do. Think very carefully. As will I. I'll see you later.